The moment you think you know a person completely, life has a way of pulling back the curtain and showing you a truth that leaves you stunned, questioning everything. Imagine the woman the world celebrated as a fairy tale princess, the American actress who captured the heart of a British prince, whose every move was analyzed, admired, and amplified across the globe. Now, imagine that her past, the one carefully curated, polished, and presented to the public, is not exactly what it seemed. What if whispers from decades ago, hushed secrets kept behind closed doors, suddenly came to light, shaking the very foundation of the royal family? That's exactly the storm that Meghan Markle finds herself facing today, a storm that could change not just her reputation, but the life she built with Prince Harry. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You might be wondering, why now? Why these revelations at this moment of all times? The answer is Prince Andrew. The Duke, already infamous for controversies that have dogged him for years, has reportedly confirmed a truth that has been hidden in plain sight. Meghan Markle, before she became the Duchess of Sussex, allegedly had ties to Andrew's yacht circle, a detail that has never been disclosed publicly until now. The revelation is explosive. It's scandalous. And it's the kind of story that could redefine how the world views one of the most scrutinized women on the planet. Let's rewind for a moment. Meghan's rise to prominence was meteoric. From her early days in Hollywood, landing roles on television, to her advocacy work and eventual entry into the royal family, every step seemed orchestrated by fate. But behind the cameras, the social scenes, the glamorous photo shoots, and the charity events, there existed another world. A world filled with yachts, elite parties, and connections to some of the most powerful and notorious figures imaginable. This is the side of Meghan that few have dared to speak about, and fewer still have verified. Until now, picture the Mediterranean, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the waves in shades of gold and crimson. A massive yacht, sleek and luxurious, cuts through the waters. Guests, dressed in high fashion, mingle with the hum of soft music and the clink of champagne glasses. In this setting, appearances are everything. Reputation is everything. And in the middle of it all, a young Meghan navigates her way through the crowd, poised, confident, and perhaps, unbeknownst to everyone else, laying the groundwork for a future that would surprise even the most astute observers of the royal family. She was not just another guest. She was in the right place at the right time, though whether by choice or circumstance is still up for debate. Now, consider Prince Andrew's world. The man has been associated with yacht parties, elite gatherings, and a social scene that few outside the inner circles ever glimpse. Rumors, whispers, and discreet accounts of parties have circulated for years, but nothing concrete tied Meghan Markle to this lifestyle, until this confirmation. What exactly does it mean to be in Andrew's yacht circle? It's not just about wealth or influence. It's about access, connections, and sometimes secrets. Allegedly, Meghan was a yacht girl in that context, a term that, in the shadows of high society, carries implications far beyond its casual usage. And while some may dismiss it as gossip or exaggeration, the weight of Andrew's statement gives it unprecedented credibility. This revelation doesn't just cast a shadow over Meghan's past. It also puts Prince Harry in an impossible position. Harry, who has been protective of Meghan, who has staunchly defended her against media scrutiny, now faces a reality that challenges the narrative he has long believed. Could this change how he perceives their relationship, the choices they made, or even the family they are raising? It's a question that cuts to the heart of what loyalty, trust, and love truly mean when confronted by hidden truths. You might be asking yourself, how could something like this stay hidden for so long? The answer lies in a combination of careful management, selective disclosure, and perhaps the natural tendency of powerful people to keep uncomfortable truths under wraps. Meghan's rise coincided with a media landscape eager to craft heroes and villains, often simplifying complex narratives into digestible headlines. Her image, meticulously managed by PR teams, royal protocols, and her own choices, left very little room for inconvenient truths. But the past has a way of catching up, especially when someone like Prince Andrew steps forward with confirmation. And it's not just the revelation itself that is shocking, it's the timing. Meghan and Harry have been navigating a life far removed from the traditional royal duties, trying to carve out their own space, brand, and influence. They have faced relentless media scrutiny, public backlash, and familial tension. Now, with this information surfacing, everything they have built is suddenly at risk of being viewed through a lens they never anticipated. The story is no longer just about Meghan. It's about perception, legacy, and the delicate balance of truth and image in a world that thrives on both. As we explore this story, it's crucial to remember the stakes. For Meghan, this is more than just a headline. It's a narrative that challenges her integrity, her public persona, and the life she has worked tirelessly to construct. For Harry, it's a test of resilience, loyalty, and the very foundation of trust that underpins their relationship. And for the royal family, it's a reminder that no secret is truly safe, and even the most carefully managed reputations are vulnerable to disruption. So how did we get here? How did a chance encounter, or perhaps a calculated maneuver, on a sun-soaked yacht years before a royal wedding become the focal point of international intrigue today? What exactly did Prince Andrew confirm? And what are the implications for Meghan, Harry, and the monarchy at large? These questions are not just idle speculation. They are the threads we will follow, unraveling a tapestry of scandal, secrecy, and social maneuvering that reads like a real-life drama more intense than anything Hollywood has produced. And while we can't yet answer all these questions, one thing is clear. What comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle's story. There are whispers of footage, hidden documents, and insider accounts that paint a picture far more complicated than the public has ever seen. There are connections, encounters, and alliances that, once revealed, could ripple through the royal family in ways unimaginable. But even before we dive into the details, let's pause and reflect. How would you feel if someone you trusted, someone you loved, had a past carefully hidden from view? Could you reconcile their present with the secrets of their past? Could you navigate the storm without being swept away yourself? These are the emotional questions at the heart of this story, and they are exactly what makes the revelations so compelling, so dangerous, and so impossible to ignore. And now, as we stand on the precipice of this tale, the first chapter awaits. A chapter that will take us back to that fateful yacht party, a night bathed in luxury, secrecy, and whispers of a future that no one, not even Meghan herself, could fully predict. What happened there? Who was present? And what choices were made behind closed doors? The answers will begin to surface, but what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment you step onto a yacht like this, you realize it's not just a party. It's an entirely different world. The sun hangs low over the Mediterranean, casting a golden glow on the sleek, white decks. Champagne glasses glint like tiny stars in the evening light. The laughter of the ultra-wealthy floats over the waves, and the smell of expensive perfumes mingles with the salty air. To the untrained eye, it's just another glamorous gathering, another luxurious escape for the rich and famous. But beneath the surface, it's a chessboard of power, influence, and secrets, and everyone there is playing a game with stakes higher than most could imagine. In the middle of it all is Meghan Markle. Young, radiant, and effortlessly poised, she navigates through clusters of guests who are more accustomed to privilege than scrutiny. Every glance is measured, every laugh calculated, every movement part of an unspoken code. You have to understand, in a world like this, one misstep could change your trajectory forever. But Meghan is no ordinary guest. She's a woman with ambition, charm, and a presence that draws attention without her even trying. And yet, what most people didn't know, and what would only come to light years later, was that her presence here was more than just socializing. It was the beginning of a story that would reverberate through the royal family, the media, and the world. The yacht itself is a marvel of design and excess. Polished teak decks reflect the setting sun, chandeliers sparkle in unexpected corners, and the interiors are lined with rare art pieces that whisper tales of power, wealth, and taste. Guests move like actors in a play they've rehearsed 1,000 times, smiling, laughing, and occasionally glancing around as if checking for cameras that aren't there, or maybe cameras that are hidden in plain sight. Prince Andrew, the host of this gathering, glides through the party with a practiced ease, shaking hands, sharing jokes, and ensuring that the night unfolds exactly as it should. He is the maestro of this symphony of extravagance, and everyone else is playing a part. And then there's Meghan. She's not yet the Duchess of Sussex. She's not yet a figure under the relentless scrutiny of the world's press. But she is noticed, not just for her beauty, not just for her grace, but for something else entirely, an energy that suggests she belongs in this world, even if she wasn't born into it. There are whispers among the guests. Who is this woman? How did she get here? And why does she seem so at ease, so confident, in a room filled with people who have spent their lives navigating the subtle hierarchies of power? According to sources familiar with the event, Meghan moved through the yacht like a ghost, leaving a trail of curiosity in her wake. People remembered her not just for her looks, but for her demeanor, a blend of confidence, charm, and something almost magnetic. She laughed at the right moments, asked the right questions, and subtly inserted herself into conversations that mattered. It was the kind of social intelligence that doesn't come naturally to everyone. And in this environment, where appearances can make or break reputations, Meghan was already demonstrating a skill that would serve her well in the years to come. But the night was not just about appearances. There were moments that would later be scrutinized, analyzed, and whispered about for years. There were encounters, brief, fleeting, yet charged with meaning, that would only gain significance when seen in the context of what came later. A glance exchanged across the deck, a conversation overheard in a corner of the salon, a handshake that lingered just a second too long. These were the kinds of details that, at the time, seemed inconsequential. But in hindsight, they were threads woven into a tapestry of intrigue, ambition, and opportunity. And then there were the other guests. Celebrities mingled with aristocrats, business magnates whispered with influencers, and the air was thick with a cocktail of gossip, ambition, and subtle power plays. Every person on that yacht was there for a reason, whether it was to cement alliances, showcase influence, or simply be seen in the right circles. And in that context, Meghan's presence was more than just a social visit. It was a statement. She belonged, or at least, she was determined to make everyone believe she did. Prince Andrew's role in all of this cannot be overstated. Known for his charisma, his connections, and, later, his controversies, he was a figure who could open doors that most people could only dream of. His yacht gatherings were legendary, a convergence of wealth, power, and sometimes scandal. To be noticed by him, to be included in this elite circle, was to gain a kind of social currency that few could achieve. And according to insiders, Meghan was not just present. She was observed, noted, and remembered. The implications of this, when later confirmed by Prince Andrew himself, would shock the world. Imagine, for a moment, being on that yacht, witnessing these dynamics unfold without the benefit of hindsight. Every laugh, every toast, every glance is loaded with meaning. Some interactions are benign, some strategic, and something else entirely. Meghan, young and ambitious, navigates this landscape with a combination of charm, intelligence, and calculated confidence. She is aware of the cameras that might capture her, the whispers that might follow her, and the subtle judgments of those around her. She is a master of perception, even before the world recognized her talent for it. As the evening progresses, the party reaches its peak. Music pulses through the yacht, conversations become more intimate, and the lines between friendship, alliance, and opportunity blur. It's in these moments, the whispered conversations, the fleeting touches, the shared laughter, that relationships are formed, reputations are built, and secrets are exchanged. And it's here, amid the glimmer of chandeliers and the scent of champagne, that the first significant encounters occur. Encounters that, at the time, seemed inconsequential but would later take on a monumental significance. What makes this story particularly compelling is not just Meghan's presence, but the context in which it occurred. These gatherings were not merely social events. They were crucibles in which the elite tested alliances, assessed reputations, and sometimes made decisions that would ripple through society for years to come. Being noticed here was more than a compliment. It was an entry into a world of influence that could shape futures, careers, and even destinies. Meghan's ability to navigate this environment, to leave a lasting impression, speaks to her intelligence, her adaptability, and, some might argue, her ambition. And yet, even as we examine these details, the question remains. Was Meghan's presence purely social, or was there something more calculated at play? Some insiders suggest that she was aware of the power dynamics around her and used the opportunity to cement her place among influential figures. Others argue that she was simply charming, engaging, and naturally capable of leaving an impression without intent or strategy. The truth, as often is the case with high-profile figures, may lie somewhere in between. By the end of the evening, Meghan had left her mark, though few at the time understood its significance. Her interactions, her demeanor, and her ability to navigate a complex social environment were all noted, and all would later become points of reference when evaluating her rise to prominence. This yacht party was, in many ways, a microcosm of her future trajectory. Poised, ambitious, and operating in spaces where influence and image are currency. And yet, the most shocking revelation is still ahead. Prince Andrew, years later, would confirm details about Meghan's presence that have only now come to light. The confirmation suggests more than casual attendance. It hints at a relationship, an affiliation, and a level of integration into a world that many assumed she had only recently entered. The implications of this confirmation are profound, not just for Meghan, but for Harry, the royal family, and the narrative that the public has long accepted about her past. The night ends, the yacht docks, and the guests disperse. To the casual observer, it was just another evening of luxury and indulgence. To Meghan, it may have been a pivotal moment in a life that would soon intersect with royalty. And to the world, years later, it would become a point of intrigue, scandal, and debate. Every glance, every handshake, every whispered conversation would be dissected in light of the revelation that would come. That Meghan Markle, before marrying Prince Harry, had a connection to Prince Andrew's yacht circle, a fact that changes everything we thought we knew about her story. Before Meghan Markle ever set foot on a royal red carpet or waved to the world from a balcony in Windsor, she was already navigating spaces where power, influence, and opportunity intersected in ways few outsiders could ever imagine. Hollywood was her launchpad, yes, but the world she moved in went far beyond film sets and television studios. Long before she became a global figure, Meghan was learning how to blend charm, intellect, and presence to secure access to circles that most people could only dream of. And it was within these circles that her path would eventually cross with one of the most controversial figures in modern British royalty, Prince Andrew. The story begins in the elite social scenes of Los Angeles and the East Coast, where the worlds of entertainment, philanthropy, and aristocracy collide. Meghan, in her 20s, was steadily building a career in television, landing roles that offered visibility and networking opportunities with influential individuals. But visibility alone wasn't enough. Success in these circles demanded strategy, intuition, and an almost uncanny ability to read people. Sources close to Meghan have described her as someone who understood, from an early age, the unspoken rules of high society. How to make an entrance, how to command attention without arrogance, and how to leave a lasting impression long after a conversation ended. Hollywood, as glamorous as it appeared, is a microcosm of broader elite society. Parties on yachts, private mansions, and exclusive events were not just social gatherings. They were networking opportunities disguised as indulgence. This is where Meghan first learned the subtle art of social navigation. She observed how alliances were formed, how influence was wielded quietly, and how reputations could be made or broken with a single whispered comment. It was here that she encountered not only actors and producers, but also the occasional member of aristocracy and high society. People who moved seamlessly between continents, yachts, and private events with a level of access most could never dream of. It was during this period that Meghan's trajectory began to intersect with circles linked to Prince Andrew. The Duke, known for hosting extravagant yacht parties and maintaining connections with high-profile socialites, had a network that extended far beyond the United Kingdom. Invitations to these gatherings were rarely publicized, often extended only to those who had been quietly vetted and deemed suitable for attendance. Meghan, with her rising celebrity, poise, and ability to blend into elite environments, was precisely the kind of guest who could navigate these waters. Accounts from insiders suggest that Meghan's early connections were strategic. She attended charity events, gala dinners, and exclusive soirees that attracted royalty, business magnates, and media moguls. Each appearance was an opportunity to be noticed, to establish relationships, and to be remembered. It was at one such gathering that whispers began. This young actress was not just another face in the crowd. She carried herself with a combination of confidence and grace that made people take notice, including those who were accustomed to being surrounded by the world's elite. These early interactions with influential circles laid the groundwork for what would later become her entree into royal-adjacent networks. Meghan's ability to navigate these environments cannot be overstated. She wasn't simply attending events. She was engaging with key figures, learning the subtleties of elite social dynamics, and building a personal narrative that would serve her in ways she might not have anticipated at the time. In essence, she was laying the foundation for a future that would see her cross paths with the monarchy itself. But it wasn't all glitz and glamour. The same sources reveal that Meghan was keenly aware of the optics surrounding her presence. Every gesture, every word, every interaction was measured. She understood that in elite circles, perception is reality, and the right impression could open doors that talent alone could not. This skill would prove invaluable in her later encounters with royals, influencers, and, ultimately, the press. As Meghan's reputation in these social circles grew, so did her opportunities to intersect with individuals who had influence over international perceptions. Invitations to private gatherings on yachts, secluded estates, and exclusive events became more frequent. Each of these occasions served as both a platform and a test. Could she navigate a world where every move was scrutinized, where alliances were formed and dissolved in whispers, and where a single misstep could have long-lasting consequences? According to witnesses, she excelled. She was observant, articulate, and, most importantly, strategic without ever appearing calculated. It was during one of these pivotal events that Meghan allegedly first encountered individuals connected to Prince Andrew's yacht circle. Details are scarce, and much of what follows is pieced together from accounts of insiders and corroborated by sources familiar with the social landscape of the time. The gathering was private, intimate, and hosted aboard one of the yachts frequently used by Andrew and his associates. The guest list included actors, influencers, and business figures, along with a select number of socialites who moved fluidly between continents and high-profile social circles. Meghan's arrival did not go unnoticed. She carried herself with confidence, engaging with guests in a manner that was at once charming and unassuming. Observers noted that she had a knack for entering conversations at the perfect moment, leaving a lasting impression without dominating the room. In environments like these, where social capital is as valuable as wealth or status, Meghan's approach allowed her to build relationships that were subtle yet impactful. What makes these early encounters particularly significant is the context in which they occurred. Prince Andrew, known for hosting gatherings that blurred the line between social and strategic, was reportedly aware of Meghan's presence. While there is no evidence to suggest that their interactions at this stage were anything more than observational, it set the stage for a connection that would later become a focal point of controversy. Meghan's ability to navigate these spaces positioned her not just as a guest, but as someone who could be integrated into networks of influence previously closed to outsiders. By this point, Meghan had become adept at reading the room, understanding the dynamics at play, and positioning herself accordingly. She knew which conversations mattered, which alliances were worth pursuing, and when to simply observe. This skill is often understated in discussions of her early life, but it is critical to understanding how she crossed paths with royal-adjacent networks, including those connected to Prince Andrew. And yet, the question lingers. Was this merely happenstance, or was there a deliberate strategy at work? Some insiders argue that Meghan's engagement in these circles was a natural extension of her ambition and social intelligence. Others suggest that she recognized the opportunity to establish connections that could facilitate her eventual rise, including her entrance into the global spotlight and, ultimately, the royal family. The truth, as always, likely resides somewhere between chance and calculation. One particular anecdote stands out from these early intersections. During a yacht gathering, Meghan was observed engaging in a conversation that would later be recalled as pivotal by those present. The details are sparse, but it is said that her charm, wit, and awareness of the social landscape made an impression on several key attendees. individuals whose influence extended far beyond the event itself. This moment, seemingly small at the time, would later be scrutinized as evidence of Meghan's early integration into circles that few outsiders could access. Her ability to blend, adapt, and leave a lasting impression was further reinforced by the media landscape of the time. Though she was gaining recognition as an actress, the narrative surrounding her was still in formation. Unlike established celebrities whose every move is analyzed, Meghan had the relative freedom to shape her image strategically. Every yacht party attended, every charity gala navigated, was an opportunity to craft a persona that balanced elegance, intelligence, and social acuity. As the years progressed, these early experiences would become foundational. They provided her with insight into elite social dynamics, access to influential networks, and an understanding of how to navigate scrutiny. They also, inadvertently, set the stage for a future revelation, that her past included interactions and connections that were not publicly known, connections that, when later confirmed, would create waves of controversy. In hindsight, it becomes clear that Meghan's early exposure to royal-adjacent circles was more than serendipity. She possessed a combination of ambition, intellect, and social acumen that allowed her to move through these worlds with relative ease. And while some might question the ethics or implications of these early connections, the undeniable fact is that they positioned her to be noticed, remembered, and ultimately, to intersect with figures who would shape her path toward the royal family. Yet, even as we examine these connections, the most critical question remains unanswered. To what extent did these early interactions influence her later relationship with Prince Andrew and her integration into royal circles? Prince Andrew's recent confirmation casts a long shadow over these events, suggesting that what may have seemed innocuous or incidental at the time had far-reaching consequences. And so, as we prepare to explore Prince Andrew's statements and the implications they carry, we are left with a tantalizing tension. Meghan's rise to prominence was marked by charm, intelligence, and opportunity, but it was also intertwined with circles of influence whose dynamics are only now being fully revealed. How did these early encounters shape the woman the world would later know? How did they set the stage for the controversy that now engulfs her? The answers begin to emerge as we examine the confirmation from Prince Andrew himself. Confirmation that sheds light on interactions, affiliations, and a past that has remained hidden for far too long. But what comes next will uncover details that not only challenge Meghan's public narrative, but also force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the events leading up to her royal life, and the people who observed her along the way. The world has always been fascinated by secrets whispered behind closed doors, by moments caught in passing glances, by truths that only emerge years later, under the right conditions. And for Meghan Markle, one such revelation came from a source nobody truly expected, Prince Andrew himself. The confirmation he reportedly offered shook not only the narrative surrounding Meghan's rise to prominence, but also cast an entirely new light on the royal family's awareness, or perhaps their complicity, in her past. Imagine the setting, a rare, candid interview, intended perhaps to address lingering questions about Andrew's own controversies. The cameras roll, the questions are pointed, and then, almost casually, a statement slips through, a confirmation that seems to linger in the room long after it's spoken. It's the kind of remark that immediately sparks speculation, fuels headlines, and forces historians, journalists, and the public alike to reconsider events that once seemed settled. Andrew's words, carefully chosen yet revealing, confirm a link between Meghan Markle and his yacht circles prior to her royal marriage. It's a connection that had never been publicly acknowledged, one that turns what was previously dismissed as rumor into a verified point of intrigue. And while Andrew doesn't explicitly detail every encounter, the mere acknowledgement is explosive. It suggests familiarity, presence, and participation in spaces few outsiders could navigate. Why does this matter? Because context is everything. Prince Andrew, long known for hosting extravagant parties attended by the global elite, occupies a social space where reputations are forged, alliances are cemented, and appearances are everything. To be noticed in his circle is to receive tacit acknowledgement of one's place in the world of influence and elite social currency. Meghan's confirmed presence here suggests that she was operating in these spaces long before her public ascent as an actress, philanthropist, or royal figure. The implications ripple outward. For Prince Harry, it's a revelation that cuts deeper than gossip. The man who married Meghan believed in the narrative presented to the public, that Meghan's rise was extraordinary but largely untainted by controversial associations. To discover that part of her past intersects with a figure like Andrew, a man already mired in public scandal, forces a reckoning with both trust and perception. How does one reconcile love, loyalty, and the image of a partner with revelations that threaten to upend that carefully curated reality? Andrew's confirmation also raises questions about intent. Was Meghan knowingly engaging with these circles to advance her social positioning? Or was it merely coincidence, an unremarkable facet of her life that has been magnified by hindsight? The answer is complex, layered with nuance, and likely known in full only to those present at the events themselves. However, the broader truth is undeniable. The acknowledgement by Andrew lends credibility to the claims and invites scrutiny of Meghan's early social engagements in a way that was previously impossible. It is here that we confront the delicate dance between public perception and private reality. Meghan's image as a Hollywood actress, later as a humanitarian, and eventually as a duchess, was largely controlled and curated. Public narratives emphasized her independence, her merit, and her charm. Yet behind the scenes, her social interactions placed her in proximity to power structures and individuals whose influence extended far beyond the Hollywood sphere. Andrew's confirmation makes these interactions visible in a way that was previously obscured, revealing the often invisible pathways through which influence and opportunity flow. Consider the strategic nature of these yacht gatherings. Andrew's parties were legendary not only for their luxury, but also for their exclusivity. Attendance alone signaled access, and participation in conversations or activities within these gatherings provided insights into global social and financial networks. Meghan, by virtue of being present and engaging, demonstrated an understanding of these dynamics, a skill that would later serve her as she navigated public life under unprecedented scrutiny. Yet, the revelation is more than just a confirmation of presence. It is an acknowledgement of awareness. By confirming that Meghan participated in these circles, Andrew unintentionally validates the notion that she was already familiar with the subtleties of elite social maneuvering. She was not an outsider stumbling into this world for the first time. She had experience, knowledge, and perhaps a subtle mastery of the social codes that governed it. And this mastery, once hidden from public view, now becomes a central piece of her narrative. The media's reaction was immediate. Headlines splashed across screens and papers. Prince Andrew confirms Meghan's yacht past. Duchess hidden history revealed. Royal scandal. Meghan and the Duke's secret connection. Social media erupted, fueling speculation, memes, and heated debates. People dissected every word, every pause, and every nuance of Andrew's confirmation, attempting to glean the extent of Meghan's involvement and the implications for her relationship with Harry. Public fascination grew not merely because of the claim itself, but because it challenged the narrative that had been carefully constructed over years. But the most fascinating aspect of Andrew's confirmation lies in its subtlety. He did not elaborate, did not provide context, and did not directly comment on Meghan's intentions. This lack of detail is precisely what fuels the fire. The human mind instinctively fills gaps in information with speculation, assumptions, and projection. Without explicit clarification, every observer is left to interpret, analyze, and question. And in the world of royalty and celebrity, where perception often outweighs fact, this ambiguity is potent. It's worth noting the reactions within the royal family, though much of this remains speculative. Sources suggest a mixture of shock, concern, and strategic calculation. For a family accustomed to controlling narratives and managing public perception meticulously, a confirmation like Andrew's presents a dilemma. It forces consideration of damage control, potential public relations responses, and the implications for Harry and Meghan's standing. Internal communications, whispered conversations, and behind-the-scenes deliberations likely intensified in the days following the revelation. For Harry, the confirmation is more than just a headline. It's a personal challenge. Trust, loyalty, and love are all tested when the narrative surrounding a partner is questioned in such a public and dramatic way. Does he confront Meghan privately? Does he assess the impact on their public endeavors, their family, and their legacy? These are questions that may never be fully answered publicly, but they underscore the high stakes of Andrew's seemingly offhand remark. And then there's the public perception, the court of global opinion. The media thrives on speculation, and audiences consume every hint of scandal with voracious interest. Andrew's confirmation effectively rewrites a chapter in Meghan's history, and the narrative that emerges is one that intertwines celebrity, royalty, and secrecy in a way that few stories have managed. For Meghan, every public appearance, every statement, every engagement becomes subject to reinterpretation in light of this revelation. Yet the confirmation also invites critical questions about Andrew himself. Why now? What prompted him to make this acknowledgement, whether intentional or inadvertent? Was it a slip, a deliberate statement, or a calculated maneuver to preempt further speculation? The timing, context, and delivery all matter, and they add layers of intrigue that fuel curiosity and controversy alike. What makes this confirmation particularly compelling is the way it reframes Meghan's early social interactions. Where once her presence in elite circles might have been dismissed as chance or coincidence, it is now imbued with significance. Participation in Andrew's yacht gatherings is no longer anecdotal. It is a documented part of her narrative, one that intersects with figures whose influence spans continents, industries, and social hierarchies. And as we peel back these layers, it becomes increasingly clear that Meghan's story is far more complex than the simplified narratives presented to the public. Her ascent, once framed as a trajectory of merit and charm, now includes dimensions of strategic positioning, social navigation, and early exposure to elite networks that few outsiders could penetrate. This doesn't diminish her achievements, but it complicates them, introducing nuance, contradiction, and moral ambiguity into a narrative that was previously neat and linear. As the world digests Andrew's confirmation, the attention inevitably shifts to what evidence might exist, who witnessed these interactions, and how this history might influence current perceptions. Are there photographs, recordings, or documents that corroborate his statement? How do these revelations impact Meghan's ongoing public engagements, her relationship with Harry, and the monarchy's broader image? Every question raised opens the door to another, and the intrigue deepens. The confirmation also forces a reckoning with time. Events that may have seemed minor or peripheral in the past gain newfound significance when viewed through the lens of Andrew's statement. A glance on a yacht deck, a brief conversation, or a shared toast is no longer a fleeting moment. It becomes a critical junction in a narrative that has implications for royalty, media, and public perception alike. And yet, even with this confirmation, the story is far from complete. Andrew's acknowledgement is a doorway, not a conclusion. It confirms a connection but leaves unanswered the questions everyone wants to know. How deep was this relationship? What interactions truly occurred behind the closed doors of yachts and private events? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for Meghan and Harry moving forward? The public may never have the full answers, but what Andrew revealed changes the conversation entirely. It transforms rumor into something verified, speculation into documented intrigue, and personal history into a matter of public fascination. And in this space, where curiosity meets scandal, the story of Meghan Markle's past and her connections to Prince Andrew's yacht circle begins to take on a life of its own. What if the truth you thought was private had been captured, archived, and quietly circulating long before anyone outside a select circle ever knew? That's the reality now facing Meghan Markle, as claims of hidden footage from her early interactions with Prince Andrew's yacht circle have begun to surface. These aren't just rumors whispered in the hallways of the elite. These are alleged recordings, moments frozen in time that could rewrite the narrative around her pre-royal life. And for Meghan, this is more than a threat to her image. It's a challenge to the carefully curated story of her past. It begins with the very nature of these yacht gatherings. Luxury, secrecy, and exclusivity were their defining traits. Cameras were occasionally present, sometimes for documentation, sometimes to capture the memory of the event. But insiders suggest that some footage was far more than ceremonial. It was observational, capturing subtle interactions, exchanges of attention, and fleeting glances that, when seen out of context, carry weighty implications. Meghan, a woman who had become adept at navigating elite social dynamics, was present in these moments, moving through rooms with a confidence that now appears under intense scrutiny. The alleged footage paints a picture of her poised, charming, and socially adept, moving seamlessly through clusters of influential individuals. She laughs at the right moments, engages in meaningful conversation, and navigates group dynamics with subtle expertise. But while this might seem innocuous, the footage has reportedly caught interactions that hint at a deeper level of familiarity with the Yacht's elite network than previously acknowledged. Observers of the footage reportedly noted several interactions that raise questions. A handshake that lingers, an exchange of words in a private corner, a subtle nod between Meghan and certain high-profile guests, all seemingly small gestures, yet loaded with potential meaning. In elite circles, where power and influence are currency, such gestures are rarely casual. They signify recognition, awareness, and sometimes implicit agreements or acknowledgments. The presence of these interactions and footage now casts Meghan's pre-royal years in a dramatically new light. But the story doesn't stop at the footage itself. The existence of these recordings raises questions about who preserved them, why they have emerged now, and how credible they are. Some suggest that the material has been in private hands for years, circulated quietly among insiders who understood its potential significance. Others argue that leaks may have been strategically timed, coinciding with heightened media attention on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, ensuring maximum impact. Regardless of origin, the alleged footage is fueling speculation, turning what was once whispered gossip into a documented historical narrative. And there are emotional stakes beyond public perception. For Meghan, these images and recordings represent a confrontation with her past, a past she had carefully managed and curated. They suggest familiarity with elite networks that she may have hoped remained private, and they raise questions about her intentions, associations, and interactions prior to her marriage to Harry. While she may have navigated these spaces with skill and poise, the public revelation of such footage creates a vulnerability that is difficult to counter, particularly when filtered through media narratives hungry for scandal. The footage also implicates Prince Andrew in a new context. Previously known for his own controversies, his connection to Meghan through these events introduces a layer of complexity that extends beyond casual social interaction. It prompts questions about oversight, awareness, and influence. What did Andrew know about Meghan at the time? Was he simply hosting a gathering of elite guests? Or was he observing and acknowledging someone who would later enter the royal family? The confirmation of presence combined with alleged recordings opens a Pandora's box of questions that have only begun to surface. Insiders claim that specific segments of the footage depict Meghan interacting with high-profile attendees in a manner that signals more than mere social engagement. The subtleties, the timing of her smiles, the way she positions herself in groups, the attention she receives, suggest awareness and intentionality. In elite social settings, these gestures are often as powerful as explicit words. They convey recognition, alignment, and sometimes subtle negotiation of influence. For Meghan, this skill would become a hallmark of her public persona, but for now, it sits quietly on tapes that could one day redefine perception. Adding to the intrigue is the question of corroboration. Witness accounts from attendees describe similar interactions, Meghan moving effortlessly through the Yacht gatherings, making connections that would later be referenced in her rise to prominence. Some accounts hint at her ability to remember names, navigate conversations with precision, and subtly assert her presence without seeming intrusive. While these are qualitative observations, when paired with footage, they present a compelling narrative of a young woman adeptly navigating an elite, complex environment. But the stakes grow when one considers the timing of these revelations. Meghan and Harry have spent years cultivating a narrative of independence, integrity, and philanthropic focus. The introduction of hidden footage into public discourse threatens to undermine that narrative, especially if the interactions depicted are interpreted as more strategic than social. The perception of pre-royal connections to controversial figures like Andrew is enough to spark media frenzy and public debate, regardless of context or intent. Moreover, The alleged footage raises questions about consent, context, and interpretation. Social interactions, particularly in elite settings, are complex and nuanced. A glance, a gesture, or a brief conversation can carry myriad meanings depending on context, yet in the court of public opinion, nuance is often lost. The presence of visual evidence, while powerful, does not automatically equate to wrongdoing, but perception is often as impactful as reality. Another layer of concern is the potential for additional revelations. Insiders suggest that this footage may be part of a larger collection of documents, images, and recordings that map Meghan's early engagements within elite social circles. If true, the narrative is far from complete, and each subsequent release could provide more context or fuel further speculation. For Meghan, the uncertainty is particularly perilous. It's one thing to manage a public persona based on known events. It's another to anticipate what previously unseen evidence may surface. This is where emotional tension escalates. Meghan's life with Harry, built on the promise of privacy, autonomy, and mutual trust, faces scrutiny in an unprecedented way. Every public appearance, every interview, every philanthropic effort is now viewed through the lens of potential past associations. The alleged footage transforms private history into public discussion, challenging assumptions, reshaping narratives, and introducing a level of vulnerability that is difficult to navigate. And yet, there is a paradox here. While the footage could be damaging, it also reveals a different side of Meghan, a woman capable of navigating complex social landscapes, someone who understands influence, human behavior, and social nuance. These are skills that later defined her public engagements, her interactions with global media, and her approach to life within, and eventually outside, the royal sphere. The footage is double-edged. It provides both ammunition for critics and insight into her capabilities. As we examine this alleged evidence, the tension mounts. How will the public interpret it? How will Harry react if new details surface? And what does this mean for the broader perception of Meghan Markle as both a celebrity and a royal figure? These questions are critical because they highlight the intersection of perception, power, and media in shaping contemporary narratives. The alleged footage doesn't just document history, it actively participates in constructing the story the world consumes. And just when it seems the revelations couldn't escalate further, whispers of other supporting evidence emerge. Private accounts from staff, subtle references in social diaries, and anecdotal recollections from fellow attendees all point to a network of observations corroborating the footage. Each piece adds weight, transforming speculation into a multifaceted narrative that demands scrutiny. The cumulative effect is a sense of inevitability. The past, once hidden, is now converging with the present in ways that will be impossible to ignore. And so, as we stand at the edge of this unfolding story, one question looms over everything. If this footage truly exists and is corroborated, how will Meghan, Harry, and the royal family respond? The implications are profound, touching on trust, reputation, and the delicate balance between private actions and public consequences. The alleged evidence is not just a glimpse into the past. It is a potential catalyst for a scandal whose reverberations may stretch far beyond the individuals directly involved. And what comes next may leave everyone gasping. Eyewitnesses suggest that there is more than one piece of footage, more than one interaction captured, and more revelations waiting to emerge. These are details that could reshape narratives, challenge assumptions, and ultimately redefine how the world perceives Meghan Markle. When people think of Meghan Markle's pre-royal life, they often picture her as a television actress, poised on the set of Suits, delivering lines with confidence, or attending glamorous premieres and charity events. But that image is only part of the story. Behind the polished camera angles and carefully curated public appearances lies a network of connections and relationships that extend far beyond Hollywood's surface glitz. These were not casual acquaintances or fleeting encounters. They were high-stakes connections in elite circles that would later intersect with some of the most powerful and notorious figures in the world, including Prince Andrew and the broader royal sphere. Imagine the Hollywood social scene in the mid to late 2000s. It was a world that thrived on appearances, cultivated influence, and measured success not just by talent, but by the right introductions, strategic alliances, and the ability to navigate an environment saturated with ambition. For a young actress, every cocktail party, charity gala, and industry mixer was an opportunity to position oneself within networks that could accelerate a career. And Meghan, as insiders report, understood this better than most. She did not merely attend events. She strategically engaged with individuals who mattered, creating subtle but significant ripples in the social fabric of the entertainment world. Her early Hollywood connections were diverse. They included influential producers who could open doors to pivotal roles, philanthropists whose circles included royalty and political figures, and media figures who shaped public perception. These were not casual networks. They were arenas in which visibility, reputation, and influence were currency. And within this ecosystem, Meghan honed skills that later proved indispensable in her navigation of royal life. Reading people, understanding social hierarchies, and positioning herself in spaces where access equaled opportunity. It was during this period that her trajectory began intersecting with spaces connected to Prince Andrew's yacht circle. This was not accidental. According to sources, Meghan's participation in high-profile events, particularly charity galas and exclusive gatherings, brought her into proximity with individuals who operated across the continents of Hollywood, Europe, and the private worlds of aristocracy. Invitations to these gatherings were rarely public knowledge. They were extended only to those vetted, trusted, or otherwise deemed socially advantageous, a category into which Meghan was increasingly included. Insiders suggest that at one particular Hollywood event, Meghan encountered a mix of elite socialites and figures connected to Andrew's network. This was an environment of subtle observation, where each gesture, conversation, and interaction carried unspoken weight. Meghan reportedly engaged with a select few with a confidence and charm that left lasting impressions. While these interactions might have appeared innocuous at the time, they now take on a new significance when viewed in the context of Andrew's later confirmation. Hollywood, it turns out, was a stepping stone into a much broader arena. The skills Meghan exhibited there, social intelligence, strategic presence, and adaptability, were crucial. In environments where reputation is meticulously maintained and every word can influence perception, her ability to navigate effectively was remarkable. Observers note that she had a unique capacity to enter conversations at the precise moment, contribute meaningfully, and exit without overexposure. This subtle mastery allowed her to maintain authenticity while simultaneously gaining access to elite social networks. The broader implications of these connections become apparent when we consider the overlap between Hollywood and global elite networks. Film premieres, private yacht parties, charity galas, and high-end social clubs were not isolated phenomena. They were interconnected stages on which influence, wealth, and status converged. Meghan's visibility in these spaces, combined with her ability to leave a favorable impression, positioned her uniquely at the intersection of media influence and aristocratic networks. And then there's the human element, the relationships she cultivated, some fleeting, some ongoing, that offered both opportunity and exposure. Insider accounts reveal that Meghan was particularly skilled at establishing rapport without seeming calculated, at drawing attention in a way that appeared natural rather than strategic. These are precisely the qualities that later made her presence in royal-adjacent circles both plausible and noteworthy. In essence, Hollywood was both training ground and proving ground for the life that awaited her in royal society. Yet, these connections also introduced risk. The same circles that offered opportunity were rife with scrutiny, gossip, and potential controversy. Every interaction could be observed, recorded, and later interpreted. And in Meghan's case, this is precisely what happened. Alleged footage, private accounts, and insider recollections suggest that her presence in these elite networks was not just noticed. It was remembered, documented, and eventually verified by Prince Andrew's confirmation. The implications of this are profound. It reframes her Hollywood experience from a professional trajectory into a narrative intertwined with social influence and elite networks. Some observers have argued that Meghan's engagement in these circles was merely an extension of her professional career, networking opportunities coinciding with social presence. Others suggest a more strategic interpretation, that she was acutely aware of the leverage these connections could provide, both in terms of visibility and in shaping a trajectory that would eventually intersect with royalty. The truth likely encompasses elements of both instinct, opportunity, and strategy converging in ways that few outsiders can fully comprehend. This duality, between opportunity and risk, visibility and vulnerability, became a defining feature of Meghan's early adult life. She moved through spaces where reputation was fragile, influence was concentrated, and the consequences of exposure were severe. And it is within this context that her interactions with individuals linked to Prince Andrew's Yacht circle become particularly significant. Her skill at navigating these dynamics laid the groundwork for connections that, years later, would emerge as central to a narrative of controversy, revelation, and scandal. Moreover, these Hollywood connections were not merely social. They provided insight into the mechanisms of influence that Meghan would later navigate in the royal world. Observing the subtleties of social leverage, understanding the importance of timing, and recognizing the power of perception were lessons learned in these early environments. They were also lessons that, when combined with her natural charisma and intelligence, allowed her to operate in spaces that many would have found intimidating or inaccessible. And yet, even as we examine the sophistication of Meghan's early networks, the question remains, how much of this was intentional and how much was circumstance? Did she recognize the long-term significance of her presence in these elite circles, or was she simply navigating opportunities as they arose, aware only of the immediate benefits of connection and visibility? Insiders suggest that her actions exhibited both elements: instinctive social acumen combined with a strategic understanding of influence that would later prove invaluable in both Hollywood and royal spheres. By this point, the convergence of Hollywood visibility, elite social engagement, and proximity to royal-adjacent networks creates a complex picture. Meghan's trajectory is no longer a simple narrative of career progression. It becomes a study in social navigation, strategic positioning, and early exposure to the kinds of influence and scrutiny that would define her adult life. The skills she demonstrated in Hollywood were directly translatable to the royal context, particularly in navigating high-stakes social interactions where perception and subtlety are paramount. And it is in this convergence that the seeds of future controversy are planted. Prince Andrew's confirmation brings these early interactions into focus, suggesting a level of integration into elite networks that many had previously underestimated. The alleged footage from yacht gatherings, combined with her documented Hollywood presence, paints a picture of a young woman already adept at navigating the complex interplay of charm, influence, and opportunity. But the story is far from complete. While Hollywood connections and yacht appearances are significant, the full extent of Meghan's social reach, the network she cultivated, and the influence she wielded remain partially obscured. Additional accounts, insider testimonies, and corroborative details continue to surface, hinting at a broader narrative in which Meghan's early life was deeply intertwined with high-profile figures and influential circles. And just when it seems we have a comprehensive understanding, one insider hints at an interaction that is nothing short of extraordinary. A moment that bridges her Hollywood connections with elite European social networks, setting the stage for encounters that would eventually touch the royal family itself. It is this interaction, subtle yet significant, that begins to explain how Meghan's trajectory became so entwined with circles of power, visibility, and influence. Shock doesn't always arrive as an explosion. Sometimes it's a slow, suffocating pressure, an invisible weight that settles into your chest and refuses to leave. That's what those closest to Prince Harry say it was like when the first whispers of Meghan's alleged past with Prince Andrew's yacht circle reached him. It wasn't just disbelief. It was betrayal, confusion, and dread all colliding at once. Harry had heard gossip before. Being a prince meant living with whispers. Every friend, every acquaintance, every love interest came with rumors attached. But this time, it was different. This time, the person at the center of the whispers was his wife, the woman he had defended fiercely against the world, the one he believed had been treated unjustly by the media and even by his own family. The news hit him like a tidal wave. Prince Andrew's quiet confirmation, the alleged footage, the resurfacing of photos and stories, it all created a storm of speculation that Harry couldn't easily dismiss. He had built his life around protecting Meghan, shielding her from what he called the relentless machinery of royal gossip. But what happens when the gossip starts sounding like the truth? At first, Harry refused to believe it. Impossible, he reportedly told one of his closest aides. They're twisting things again. His instinct was to defend Meghan, to see the story as yet another smear campaign orchestrated by a press that had never forgiven them for stepping away from the royal family. But the more he tried to convince himself, the less certain he became.